Good afternoon, grade 12s. Welcome to our business studies class. Grade 12s, we're still looking at investment securities. And welcome to our part 5. And for those who are just joining us, welcome to our 19th lesson. My name is Hector S. Nkosi, and today is the 27th of July. Sure, majority of you are so happy because it's almost the month end of July. We are looking for another month, of which is August, and we are looking at new things and great adventures. All right. So since we're still busy from Friday with our investments, so we looked at the positives and the negatives of types of investments. Today, we'll be looking at types of shares. We're busy with forms of investments and stuff. But today I want us to start with the types of shares, because we know as investors, sometimes we do invest in shares, and we must bear in mind that sometimes we do get types of shares, different types of shares. So we're going to start with the first type, of which is the popular one, your ordinary shares. Now, your ordinary shares only receive dividends when profit is made. So you can only receive dividends when profit is made. Very important. So you can only receive what? A dividend when the profit is made. Meaning that if a company in that year had a loss, it's impossible for one to receive a dividend because we did not make a profit in that year, but we made a loss. Therefore, if you made a loss, you're not entitled to a dividend. Now, grade 12s, also you need to understand what is a dividend. Remember, a dividend, it's a form of return that you get when you invest in shares. So for instance, if let's say in other words, you've got, you bought, let's say 20,000 shares in a certain company, right? So now you are investing in terms of shares. So that 20,000, its payout, or in another word, its gain, it's going to be a dividend. So we use that for shares. So when you buy, we know that when you do an investment like your fixed investment or your long-term investment, we know that its return is going to be interest income, right? Now, when you invest in shares, the only return that you're going to get is a dividend. So I'm sure by now you know what a dividend is. How does it work like? When do you get the dividend and stuff like that, right? Remember, a dividend has to do with shares, right? Now, grade 12s, let's look at a second bullet or a second pointer when it comes to your ordinary shares, right? Okay, who is entitled to ordinary shares, how and when, right? Now, let's look at the second bullet. Do you agree with me that the second bullet says normally the higher profit, the higher of the net profit, the higher the dividend, right? So basically, dividend is going to be paid out based on the profit. So if we've made so much profit, even the dividend payout will be higher, right? Then bullet number 3 says to you, shareholders are the last to be paid if the company is declared bankruptcy liquidated. So you need to know that shareholders are the last one to be paid. Dividends vary from year to year according to profits and profits made and are determined by company or board of directors. So who stipulates those dividends is the board of directors, meaning the company, because they're the ones who run the company, right? So they'll say, okay, dividends for this year, everyone gets 5% of dividends per share, So that's how they're going to pay out. Shareholders have a right to vote at the annual general meeting, your AGM, right? But shareholders, they don't have a say in your paying out of dividends. Directors have the say when it comes to paying out of the dividends. Shareholders, they just appoint directors and they vote in your AGM. Now, let's look at the rights of ordinary shareholders, right? What are the rights that an ordinary shareholders have, right? So they've got a right to vote in the AGM. They have a right to attend the AGM to learn about the company's performance. That's the reason why they attend the AGM. They have a right to receive an interim and annual reports. So they need to receive an interim and annual reports. Interim reports are the ones that we get during the year, and the annual ones are the ones that we get at the end of the year, towards the end of the period of the accounting period. To claim on company's assets if the event of bankruptcy after all other creditors and preferential shareholders have been paid. So these are the rights of your ordinary shareholders. Right. Now, boys and girls, I want us to look at another type of shares. So another type of shares that you need to know is your preference dealt with your ordinary shares. So now we are looking at your preference shares, meaning your first preference when it comes to shares, right? Now, basically your preference shares are those shares that are being preferred to someone special, and it belongs to everyone. Whereas your ordinary shares, those shares, they belong to everyone. There is no category, there is no specific person or whatsoever, right? So now your preference shares is some of these types of shares receive dividends regardless of whether a profit is made. So what do we do? Some of these shares, they receive dividends regardless of whether profit is made or not. Does it make sense? All fixed rate of return is paid on this type of shares. So a fixed rate of return is paid on this type of shares. Shareholders have preferred claim on a company's asset in the event of bankruptcy or liquidation. Also, these shares enjoy preferential rights to dividends or payment over ordinary shares. Dividends are payable according to the type of preference share. Voting rights are restricted to participate circumstances or resolutions. Non-cumulative preference shareholders will not receive any outstanding dividends from previous years. Cumulative preference shareholders will receive outstanding dividends from previous years. And also another thing you need to do, that your redeemable preference shares are redeemable or bought back at the option of the issuing company at a predetermined future. So redeemable, meaning that it can be bought back at an option of issuing company a predetermined future date. That's your redeemable preference shares. Right. Then your non-redeemable is the vice versa of redeemable, basically, boys and girls. Now, what I'd say is now your non-redeemable preference shares are only bought back when the company closes down for a reason other than bankruptcy. Then you also have convertible shares. Your preference convertible shares. Now, your convertible preference shares are converted into ordinary shares after a fixed period or on the date specified when the preference shares were issued. Then now your non-convertible preference shares will not be converted into ordinary shares. We know that convertible, they can be converted to ordinary shares, right? We know that they can be converted to ordinary shares for a fixed period, right? Then this one will not be converted into ordinary shares. And this is what? This is your non-convertible, and this is your convertible, right? I hope now you understand the difference between your ordinary shares and your preference shares. Now, let's see the rights of your preference shareholders. We have just looked at the right of your ordinary shareholders under ordinary shares. Now let's look at what other rights does the the shareholders have a right to receive dividends regardless of how much profits are made. So we need to receive what? Dividends regardless of how much profits are made. So this one, because of the preference shareholders, they are entitled to a dividend. Whether the company made a loss or a profit, they have to get a dividend, right? So receive dividend regardless of how much profits are made, right? Receive a fixed rate of return or a dividend. They are paid first, enjoy the preferential rights to dividends. So these ones are your preferred shareholders. So they are paid first. They have a preferred claim on company's assets in the event of bankruptcy or liquidation of the company. So they also both receive both interim and annual reports. They only have voting rights at the AGM under particular circumstances. For certain resolutions, your cumulative shareholders must receive outstanding or accrued dividends from previous years, and your participating preference shareholders have the right to share in surplus profits, right? So that's also what is important when it comes to your to your shares, basically, boys and girls. Very important in such a way that you have to understand this, you have to know this, boys and girls, all these types of shares, your types of investments and stuff like that. They love this in your question papers, guys, especially under section B. They love securities, basically, right? So that's why they ask shares, different types of shares, different types of investments, and stuff like that. So please, grade 12s, make sure that you do understand. And remember, this will prep you for your preliminary exam. You need to make sure that you understand each and everything, or each and everything makes sense, or the chapters. This is the right time to do so, boys and girls. Remember, we don't rest up until we finish writing our final exams, right? So for now, no resting. Let's just keep pushing. There's still time to recover. We've got a lot of time to do whatever we want to do or whatever we want to achieve at the end of the year. All right. And you must note that you must know the rights of ordinary and preference shares. So as I just said to you, they love to ask these guys in an exam situation. So please make sure that you familiarize yourself with the rights and your ordinary, the rights of ordinary and preference shareholders. Now, let's look another type of shares. We've got founders shares, basically. We're just going to touch on founders shares and bonus shares. So we've got 4 types. So according to the grade, but the list is endless, but as per grade 12 syllabus, there are 4 types of shares, right? But guys, those will be studying business or furthering their studies at varsity to do anything that has to do with commerce, become accounting or whatever, or finance. There are more types of shares, guys. It's just that here at the school level, we limit our syllabus to certain points, right? Now, let's look at shares. What after when all the shareholders are being paid. So it is very important to understand each and every step, basically, right? Now, let's speak about the bonus shares. With your bonus share payment in form of shares to shareholders, right, is being issued as compensation for unpaid dividends, right? So these are your bonus shares, basically. So uh it basically, this, boys and girls, it's more of like your payment, but in form of shares to shareholders, right? As issued the compensation for unpaid dividends. Shareholders will own more shares and collect more dividends in future, and we must know that shareholders receive these shares without being required to pay for them. Now, grade 12s, you must know that you must be able to identify the above types of shares given scenario statement. That's what I was telling you that, guys. Sorry, you must know how to differentiate all these types of shares, whether you're dealing with a bonus share, you're dealing with a founder share, you're dealing with a preference share, you're dealing with your ordinary share. You must be able to tell from the given scenario that, okay, this is so much type of share, and this will help us with what, and the other one will help us with what. It is very important, guys, because I'm telling you right now, majority of the past papers, guys, you'll see later in a year, probably by the month of August, we'll be doing lots and lots of revision where I'm taking you step by step, showing you how to answer exam type questions and stuff like that. It is very important for you to understand on what is happening there, and you must be able to answer each and every type of the question. All right. Now, let's look at this other category. Let's look at the types of preferences. Remember, with the types of preferences, we just touched based basically, but there are so many, the types of preferences. But I'm just wanna pack this for tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll start from types of preferences. Please, guys, make sure that you tune in and you know what's happening with these shares, and you can tackle each and every question that it is given to you from my side. Actually, that's it for today. Have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye, grade 12.